A dad knocks on his daughter's bedroom early on a Monday morning. Sweetheart, it's time to wake up. You have to go to school this morning. From beneath the blankets comes a groan. I don't want to get up, Dad. And why not? Why do you not want to go to school? 3 reasons, she says. Number 1, it's boring. Number 2, the kids all tease me. And number 3, I hate school. Her father nods. Fair enough, but I've got 3 reasons why you must go to school. Number 1, it's your duty. Number 2, you are 45 years old. And 3, you are the principal. Wake up. That is the invitation the church hands us every year on the first Sunday of Advent. Wake up. Now is the moment, Paul says. Pay attention, be present. Don't sleepwalk through this one precious life God has given you. Wake up. But as we all know, waking up is hard. Our girls have to be out of bed at 6:30 a.m. on school days, and I will not name names, but one of them needs to be roused at 6:15. I'll open the door, whisper her name. She takes about 15 minutes just to make peace with the idea of being awake. And honestly, I relate. As Jim Hollis, a Jungian analyst, once said, every morning when we open our eyes, we find 2 gremlins perched at the foot of our bed. One is fear, and the other is lethargy. And if those gremlins could speak, fear would whisper, today is too much, the problems are too large, you don't have what it takes, so maybe don't even try. Then lethargy leans in and adds, relax, those problems will be here waiting for you tomorrow, don't be dramatic, hit the easy button, just punt the whole thing to next week. And I don't know about you, but I listen to those gremlins more often than I would like to admit. I stand up, but I do not truly wake up. And as a result, I move through the day half present, half-hearted, unaware that God may be trying to reach me in an unexpected hour, an unexpected hardship, an unexpected person. Because it's very easy to move through life on autopilot. Not because we don't care, but because we are tired in ways that we don't often appreciate. Some of us are very busy. We move from email to meeting to errand while our inner life trails behind us like a tired child trying to keep up. And some of us have plenty of time, but the drift happens all the same. The days blur together, the routines grow familiar, the energy isn't what it used to be, and the rhythm of life slowly lulls us to sleep. Either way, we drift back into old ruts, old stories, old habits of mind that pull us away from the presence of God in our life. But here's the thing, when we drift, we become vulnerable. And there are plenty of voices quite happy for us to stay half awake. Voices that profit from our distraction. Voices that want us to cling to an ideology, but never examine our deepest values. To recite a creed, but never risk living by faith. To stay productive, but to not be truly present. Those voices are everywhere, which is why waking up is hard and staying awake even harder. So let's be clear. Advent is not a warning It is not God shouting, "Wake up," before it is too late, because look, if exhortation alone could wake us up, we would all be saints by now. Fear never wakes anyone up. Fear puts us to sleep every single time. When fear is in the driver's seat, that is our signal that we have drifted off or slipped into a kind of spiritual numbness. And that's really Paul's point. He doesn't tell us to panic because the day is near. He tells us to wake up because the dawn has already broken. Advent isn't about getting scared straight. It's about stepping out of the darkness of control and self-protection and self-numbing and into the brightness of Christ's love. As 1 John reminds us, perfect love casts out fear. In other words, fear contracts the soul, love expands it. Fear puts us to sleep, love wakes us up. And we actually saw a glimpse of this in last week's gospel in the story of Jesus' crucifixion. You know, it's very tempting to imagine that the people who carried out that execution were monsters, uniquely wicked or malicious. But the Gospels don't say that. You know, Luke tells us something far more human. They acted, he writes, because they feared the people. They weren't evil, they were scared. They were scared of losing status, scared of losing control, scared that the world as they knew it was slipping through their fingers. Fear made them irrational. Fear made them defensive. Fear made them cruel. In other words, fear put them to sleep. And so whenever Jesus prays from the cross, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing," he means that quite literally. They didn't know. They were spiritually unconscious. They were sleepwalking their way into violence. And the truth is, so are we. Whenever we harm someone with a careless word, or slip into blame, or wrap ourselves in a victim narrative, or imagine that only we can fix the world or the situation, or simply lose touch with the miracle of being alive and the gratitude that naturally arises when we are awake to that miracle. It's not that we're bad. It's not that we need to try harder. And it's certainly not that we need a sterner warning before the Son of Man returns. It is that we are asleep. And Jesus knows that about us, and Jesus loves us still. Peter Senge tells a story about one of his friends named Fred in one of his books. And Fred was very high up at the World Bank. He was driven, accomplished, always moving fast, the kind of person who lives life at a dead sprint. Then one day Fred received a diagnosis, a terminal illness, and his world stopped. So Fred kept his job, but he began to live life differently. If something didn't truly matter, Fred did not do it. He just stopped arguing with his mother. He started volunteering in the community. He just refused to waste any emotional energy on anything he could not control. Fred slowed down. He became gentler. He became grateful. In other words, Fred woke up. A few months later, the doctor called. The original diagnosis had been wrong. Fred did not have a terminal illness at all. He had a rare but a very curable condition. And whenever Fred heard the news, Fred broke down and he cried, not out of relief, but out of fear. He was terrified of going back to sleep. Now, here's the thing. The point of Advent is not to give us that kind of scare. God does not traffic in terror. The point of Advent is to tell us that we don't need a crisis to wake up. We can wake up now. We can look for Jesus now. We can step into the challenges of our life with gratitude now. We can meet the largeness of our life with faith and courage and humility now. You know what time it is. Paul says in today's letter to the Romans, it is now. The time is now for you to wake up from sleep, not because danger is coming, but because Christ is. And so whatever waking up means for you, let's be absolutely clear, it is not about squeezing more into your life. It is not another spiritual task competing for space on an already impossible to-do list. It is not self-improvement with a spiritual twist. Whatever waking up means, it has to be good news. Because ultimately, what we wake up to is the grace and tenderness and mercy of Jesus. One of my favorite stories in the Bible comes from Mark chapter 5. Jesus enters the house of a synagogue leader whose daughter had just died. He goes into her room, he takes her by the hand and says, Talitha Kumi, in Aramaic, little girl, awake. Notice the tenderness. Before Jesus speaks, he touches her. Love reaches out and touches before it tells us to wake up. It is gentle. It is intimate. It is not a command shouted through a megaphone. It's the voice of love calling someone back to life. And Advent invites us to hear those same words of God spoken over us. Talitha Kumi, my precious child, wake up. You know, today's gospel comes from Matthew 24, but just 2 chapters later in the Garden of Gethsemane, something remarkable happens. Jesus comes to his disciples and he finds them sleeping, and he says, could you not stay awake for just 1 hour? And you know, we often hear that line in a scolding tone. But to hear it that way says far more about us than it says about Jesus, because I think his heart in that moment wasn't full of anger, but tenderness. The truth is, they couldn't stay awake. They were overwhelmed, exhausted, afraid, human. And so with gentleness and love and that quiet authority that only Jesus has, he goes to them almost like a parent kneeling beside a sleeping child. And his voice is essentially the same Aramaic whisper. Talitha Kumi, my beloved disciples, my tired friends, it's time to wake. Not because judgment is coming, but because I am here. And so, yes, Advent is always an invitation to wake up. But that is not the main point. The main point is that God is on his way, and he comes not to frighten us into better behavior, but to wake us up in love. As Paul says today, salvation is nearer to us now than when we first became believers. So here is the question I invite each of us to pray through in the coming week. Where in your life do you need to wake up? Where do you keep pulling the covers over your head out of fear or exhaustion or old stories that no longer fit? Where do you need to be more honest with yourself And even more importantly, where do you need to extend grace to yourself for all the times you have failed to do that in the past? As you ponder these things, lay aside fear. The night is far gone, the day is near, and the day we awaken to is always a resurrected world and a resurrected life. Because remember, on Friday, a sleeping mob nailed Jesus to a tree, and for 3 days, sealed in the tomb, he slept. For a moment, it looked as if the powers of darkness had won, and all hope was lost. But then on that first Easter morning, as the new day dawned and the sun rose in the east, the Father's voice spoke in the heart of that tomb, "Talitha cumi," my precious child, it is now the moment for you to wake from sleep. And when Jesus stepped out of that tomb, he carried all of us with him. He was the first to rise, but not the last. Because the God who woke Jesus is the same God who will not stop waking his children, the same God who whispers into every tired and frightened soul, "Beloved, rise, beloved, wake, beloved, live." Step into this world that I love, step into the life that I have given you, with all of its beauty and heartbreak. And let that life be the school where Christ himself teaches you how to love. Amen.